My client Grace has trained her glutes for years and she's been doing all the right exercises, but her glutes still won't grow. We changed nothing about the exercises that she was doing, but we changed a few things about her training that really did matter in making her the progress that she got here in simply 8 weeks. So naturally, the search for the top 5 glute exercises begins because everybody looks at the exercise as the problem. But is that true? You see, this level of progress can be achieved by most of you by simply changing 1 or 2 things that I'm covering in this video. So if your glutes are not responding, you probably don't need a new exercise, or you don't need a new way of doing an exercise, but you probably do need these 2 key points that I'm going to share. I'm going to do this in a slightly different way. I'm not going to give you the exercises themselves, but I am going to talk about the 5 movement patterns that you need to be doing with a couple of examples. First up, we have the hip thrust or the thrust patterns. That's your glute bridges, your hip thrusts, and they're going to work the glutes in their shortened range. It's going to hit the upper parts of glute max, but also the mid parts as well. We then have the squat pattern. So barbell back squats, Smith machine back squats, certain types of leg presses are going to work the glutes in their lengthened position, which is going to target the lower portions of glute max. Then we have lunge patterns. Now these do 2 things because lunges are unilateral. So not only do we get them in the stretched position, so we're going to work that lower part of glute max again, a little bit like our back squat. Because it's unilateral, you're going to get a lot of side glute in there because it's working so hard to stop you falling over. Next, we have the hinge pattern, which is your RDLs, barbell, dumbbell, and that's going to work the glutes in their lengthened position, a bit like the squat, but in a slightly different way. And it's going to hit the lower parts of glute max, a little bit of the medial as well, because of the way that we have to control the pelvis. Next up, we have abduction exercises, so things like seated abduction, cable abductions, and that's going to work the glute medius, which helps to build the upper shelf. So it's going to give you some side proportion, but it's also going to give you a little bit more shelf as well. Grace had all of these exercises, all these movement patterns actually in the training program that she was doing. The reason that she wasn't necessarily seeing the greatest results wasn't nutrition, which is the first thing everybody goes towards. Nutrition's solid. It was because there was no strategic volume to the program. There was no relationship between those exercises and how they were being programmed on a day-to-day basis, which meant progressive overload was very difficult and there was no long-term strategy. Now, if we don't have a long-term strategy with muscle gain, we're not going to gain a lot of muscle. I would say that in all the programs I've seen from clients who join us, this is probably the thing that hurts them the most. It's actually not having weight-related goals with their training. This is what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and hip thrust 150 kilos for 10. I'm going to try and barbell back squat 70 kilos for 10. I'm going to RDL 90 kilos for 10. I'm going to Bulgarian split squat 30 kilos for 15. Without doing that, what ends up happening is you trade these exercises out far more than you need to, but you also aren't applying tension and progressive overload in a way that would meaningfully impact muscle growth. If you are applying tension in week 1 and week 2, great. But if we're not progressively overloading, that tension drops off. If we have a meaningful level of load, but we don't have the right volume, then at some point that stimulus drops off. That's where you guys are falling apart. And I truly believe the pin that holds this stuff together is having weight-related goals. Because if you say in 6 months' time, this is what I am going to achieve, you'll be absolutely amazed by how dedicated you become to those exercises, how committed you become to your training. And guess what? If you go ahead and you achieve those weights and you achieve those volumes, your glutes will have grown. They really don't have much choice. I understand that we want to have those best exercises, but actually, really what you need is the movement patterns, because that's all we did with Grace's training. We took the exercises that she was already doing, we fixed the form on a few of her compounds, we worked on the depth of her back squat, we worked on the loading of our RDL, so we're really putting the tension to the glutes. We changed these things up, this is what we created. The principles are simple. If you just follow A, B, and C, you would achieve the goal. But it isn't easy, because training to failure isn't easy. Making sure that we're committed to recovery and putting all of our effort into the training isn't easy. Making sure that we set goals and then achieving those goals isn't easy. Consistency isn't easy. Glute growth in itself is a simple process that is hard to do. This is how you are going to achieve the best glute growth, like so many of my clients before you. The 3 things they gave up in order to get those results was a hunt for the best exercise, was a hunt for the dreamiest physique in 6 weeks' time, and it was acknowledging that the path to getting those results was going to be easy. Once they gave up these 3 things and realized that they were going to be in it for the long run, they needed to push themselves, and they probably needed to do a little bit of work on themselves in order to get their training to go to failure, for their commitment to take hold, and to remove sometimes that fear of failure or that fear of success. That's how they got these results. Next week, I am going to talk exactly through how we build that structure. And it's going to talk through the importance of each exercise and how those exercises impact the next one. So when you look at the program that you have, or you download the program below, you'll be able to follow along and be like, does this match up with what it needs to do in order to facilitate the growth that I'm looking for? So please make sure you hit the subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on that. If you have any questions, stick them below. And as always, I'll see you guys next week.